today we're here to discuss the zone of interest. And just so you know, there may be spoilers.
Dieses Blumen, das ist ja wunderschön. Ja, die Azaleen da. Hier gibt es auch Gemüse. Bisschen Kräuter, auch Rosmarin. Hier ist rote Beete. Das ist Fenchel. Die Sonnenblumen. Ja. Und hier ist der Kohlrabi. Die Kinder essen wahnsinnig viel.
So this one, Michelle, is really interesting because unlike all the other films, we have not talked about this one together before recording this episode. And I feel like I'm still chewing on it in some ways. Would you like to start?
So while I was watching the film, I did not like it. I did not think it should exist. Obviously, it was a very disturbing topic. I didn't want to give attention to the people that, could do such atrocious things. Not only complicit, but also like more than that, taking clothing from the people they're killing. It was wildly disturbing. And as I drove away from the theater, I often try not to take in any new information about a film before I process it, but I broke that rule. And I listened to a podcast with the writer-director, Jonathan Glazer, and sound designer, Johnny Byrne. And just hearing about some of the techniques they use, the reason they did certain things, really helped me to kind of have more of an appreciation for the film. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this is actually a really important film. That comes at this topic from a perspective that we haven't seen. And we've had so much, written and films about this period of our history, but this is a very unique one. And I think it's an important film, mainly because it had me thinking about how easy it is to kind of ignore or shift attention away from topics that don't directly impact me. And having watched a lot of documentaries, that was my last category. So I've been watching a lot the last couple of weeks, talking about various topics, that's really heavy on my mind right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all very valid perspectives. I had a very similar experience. If I had to describe it to somebody, if there's any like central conflict, it's a family's life is disturbed when the husband who provides for this wonderful existence is transferred and isn't allowed to take the family with him. Oh, and by the way, the father and the husband is a very efficient Nazi commandant. And even just that, like getting absorbed in that drama, which is a relatable sort of family drama, it's challenging, it's disturbing, because we so easily categorize as what the Nazis did as monstrous and unspeakable. And at the same time, like, these were people dealing with real things, like real issues that families deal with now. And the point being, like, this is going on in the background. Yeah. So just even that alone was very deeply unsettling. And when you think about the way the trajectory of the movie plays out, it's like, I don't know. I feel it feels dangerous to say this in a way, but sort of like his quality of life suffered because he wasn't with his comfort of his family and this wonderful home that they created with healthy children who are smart and capable and have fun things to do and a nice garden. Yeah, it just opens up a whole can of worms about how we've seen many Holocaust films where they show the atrocities. The fact that this movie never shows a single one, and it's all suggested.
Right. I think how the film brings in the humanity of these people is very unique. I think that was really well said. Often in all these other films, we just see these are evil people doing evil things. One of the things that struck me, one of the scenes, was when the wife and mother was out in the garden with her baby. Dad went off to work and they were in the garden and she was pointing out flowers and naming the flowers. And I just so related to that as a mother. And like, I've done that with my kid. And it was just to wrap your mind around that, like, that what humanity, what people are capable of. This woman isn't all evil. she did really evil things. She was trying on like this beautiful coat and, you know, right after that, and lipstick that came from somebody else who was probably, you know, not alive anymore. To like square that in your brain is just, but I think it's very important that we think about that.
Yeah, truly. And I love that the movie took its time. Like it really is a very deliberately paced film. And it does a couple of things. It kind of lulls you into like this speed of life at which things are happening, but also, yes, it does. Like there's no music except for very specific interstitials and the beginning and the end credits. And, you know, the sound design in this movie is amazing. I mean, the fact that, you know, people often forget that sound is half of a movie experience. And
Right.
there's a great expression that a good movie is a bad movie with good sound. So like
Oh,
people will forgive like a less than stellar image. They won't forgive bad audio. And this is stellar audio. And I'm glad that I saw it in a theater with the best audio possible. But where I was going with that is there's this constant thrum of what's going on the other side of the wall and the
yes.
slow pace. One thing that made me think of later was that a lot of these events are happening in real time, and like how many people were burned alive in the time that that took? How many lives are now gone while this person was educating their baby about their flowers, or, you know,
Right.
enjoying this brand new birthday present? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, listening to the podcast, that it was fascinating to me to hear the sound designer describe the research, the amount of research that went into this to making this film and things like that. How frequently should a gunshot be heard? Like how often on average was there a gunshot? And yeah, it was just a relentless thing. You didn't see these images except for the smoke. We saw a lot of
Right.
smoke and stuff like that, but it was just you couldn't get away from it. And you had this parallel, you had often the sound like will go with the film, right? Like will go with the images, but we had like two separate movies going on. We had the
Mhm.
sound was an entirely different film from the film that we were seeing visually. And
Yes.
it just created this like tension and stress in my
Yes.
brain. And it also like I almost feel like not showing images that we associate with these kind of films was more powerful because
Mm.
the sound was making my forcing my brain to kind of draw forth images I've seen in other films like this.
Yes. Right.
And I think it was almost more powerful because of that. At the same
Absolutely.
time, I'm seeing images of flowers.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what was interesting is that it sort of feels like being in a nightmare. One, just the atrocity of what's happening, but you know that sensation when you like if you fall asleep in the middle of the day or you fall asleep in a car and you're still hearing sound and you're only imagining what that sound could possibly be, and maybe it's quite different from what you're actually thinking it is, but you know, the fact that we have this Holocaust film that came along at this time after Schindler's List, The Pianist, and all the rest. Those images are pretty well baked in. So
Mhm.
we have a pretty good idea. Although I would also say like if you're going to watch a Holocaust film, this may be not the best film to start with.
No.
I think it is definitely reliant on, you know, the work that other filmmakers have done. And of course, you know, just, you know, lots and lots of history to comb through. The thing that I was also really surprised by was that when I left the theater, I felt nothing. Like I felt completely hollow.
Mm.
And I think that was the point. Like I was so desensitized by the end
Hmm.
that I thought, wow, like what are we ignoring? You know,
Mhm.
like what's going on the other side of the wall in our little boxes? Not to, you know, lessen that
Yeah, no,
event.
I think that's a
Yeah,
very important takeaway. Absolutely. It took
yeah,
me a few days to get there, but I got there as well.
yeah.
I was still very haunted and sad immediately
Hmm.
after. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a couple of things that I loved about the movie in terms of the technique. The sound design, like wide shots. I don't believe there are any close-ups in the movie. It presents it all pretty wide. with very subtle movement, and then they would have these stylized sections where I believe it was shot with like some kind of thermal camera of
Right.
somebody planting apples along a path for
Yeah.
Jews to escape. And
Yeah.
that stuff was very, very intense,
Mhm.
especially when you introduce other heat creating
Yeah.
beings in the shot, and just like, what can people see? What can people not see? I thought that was just a really powerful and stylized way to take us a little deeper into the experience that people in the concentration camps were dealing with, or, a possible hope to escape. I feel like I'm not articulating it very well, but
Yeah.
it's sort of like it's our only way in to their side. Like, it's our only
Yeah.
on that side of the
It,
wall, if that makes
it
sense.
was the only good. It was
Yeah.
like that's, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, it was shot so differently, but it was someone doing, and we didn't get to see who, but it was someone doing something good for these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I also thought it was fascinating with the end of the movie how it had cut from the main character looking down the hall, and then it cut to like a pretty long section of present day Holocaust museum being maintained by custodians.
I think that was on site at Auschwitz, I
Yeah,
assumed. Yeah,
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 yeah. And
that was
then the
amazing.
choice to cut back to him, and then he just assumingly goes back to work, further necessitating the need for a Holocaust museum. It's just, oh
That
man.
was very powerful.
I had a similar trajectory as you. I was like, this film should not exist. And I actually haven't done any deep dives yet. I kind of wanted to formulate my own thoughts on this one in particular. So I'll be very curious to see what others have said about it, what the filmmakers have said about it. But yeah, just the level of restraint exercised by the filmmakers, just,
Mhm.
yeah, it painted this whole picture of
Mhm.
horror. So,
Makes me want to put the movie higher on my list, actually. The more I think
I'm
about
looking at my
it and
list
talk
right
about
now, and
it.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, after talking about it, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to elevate that a little.
Mhm.